Last year when I stood before you, I had been here, 3 months maybe. And I must say that it's so much better this year being able to look out and see so many familiar faces. But because of that, I'm going to be a little brave. So we're going to play a game. Yeah, there's some fun-loving people out here. So, for those of you who might come on Friday nights, you might know that I tend to like to do an audience participation. Might seem like a bold choice with over 1,000 people. Don't lose hope. We can do it. I also often like to say it's my dream to be Rabbi Oprah, which is, you get revelation and you get revelation. I know that's not as nice as a new car, but budget. So I figure what better day to do this than Rosh Hashanah. So here's our game. I'm going to say the beginning of an idiom, and you're going to finish it. Usually I run around with a mic, but I'm just going to trust all of you to speak together, okay? Can I get some head nods just so we have some agreement? Thank you. Some religious school teachers are in it to win it. So, first one. Practice makes... You guys are so good. A watched pot.
Never boils.
Absence makes the heart. Honesty is the... There's no place like... I think that went pretty well. So I think it's safe to say that many of you have heard these bits of wisdom before. You may even have gone so far as to question their validity, as I did recently. When you consider each of them, they begin to sound nonsensical. For instance, let's take practice makes perfect. Thinking that you'll reach perfection through enough practice is probably a recipe for disappointment and frustration. Perfection doesn't often lead to perfection. Like, you can practice as much as you want, there's always more to learn. A watched pot never boils? Yes, it will. Because science. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. That sounds like it could be accurate, but we also have another idiom that claims the exact opposite. Out of sight, out of mind. Honesty is the best policy. Can I just get a show of hands if you've ever used the policy of honesty and immediately regretted it? Thank you. Thank you for being honest right now. Maybe I didn't do this. My mother's here, and I'm about to reference a mother. It's not you, Mom. I promise. Maybe you hurt your mother's feelings by telling her that her brisket was dry. A definite no-no. You don't do that. That's when it's okay to lie. And there's no place like home. Okay, that one's actually fine, but I'm from Kansas, so I just wanted to have a shout out. And also use it as an opportunity to say hello to my grandmother Dorothy, true name, from Kansas. And it's her birthday this weekend, so happy birthday. So let's try one more. Forgive and forget. It's a really nice idea. Beautiful, really. Implying that we are so capable of being open-hearted and forgiving and compassionate that we actually can erase the offense from our memory completely, freeing the offender from our anger and resentment. Except, I don't know about you, you don't usually forget. You usually remember those things that hurt you. And I think that's okay. We don't need to forget the ways we've been hurt, or the ways we've hurt others, especially. If we forget our own transgressions, we can't learn from them. If we forget the offenses of others, we can't remain in relationship with them. We can't help encourage their personal growth. Why else shouldn't we forget? Well, I'll make the claim that forgetting is not Jewish. To explain a little bit more, forgiveness, for sure, we love that. That's why you're here. But forgetting, definitely not Jewish. This holiday, Rosh Hashanah, we've already mentioned it, has another name, and that's Yom HaZikaron. That literally means the day of remembrance, not forgetting. It's not okay to forget. We're here because we want God to remember us for good. We remember our own deeds, both our proudest moments and our lowest points, as well as everything in between. We remember those we have wronged and the ways in which we have been wronged by others, by ourselves, and by God. We are not a people that forgets. We are commanded to remember constantly. Our ancient sages looked at where the Torah uses the word zachor, which happens a crazy amount of times, and created a daily spiritual practice of reciting 6 things aloud every day, lest we forget them. We are commanded to remember Shabbat. We are commanded to remember the Exodus from Egypt. We are commanded to remember receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai. We are commanded to remember when we lost faith in God and built the golden calf. Of course, God would not want us to forget that one. We're commanded to remember how Amalek attacked us when we left Egypt so that we may blot out his name. So a little grudge holding is okay. Not really, we'll get to the rest. We're also commanded to remember why Miriam was struck with leprosy after speaking ill of Moses' non-Israelite wife. The lesson here is don't say bad things about your in-laws. But you're welcome for whoever needed to hear that message today. But forgetting is not in the Jewish people's DNA. But if we're not able to forget, how can we actually let go and forgive? Our tradition tells us that we have no choice. We must forgive others and ourselves. Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, also known as Maimonides, the medieval Jewish scholar, he wrote an entire chapter about laws related to tshuva, to repentance, the laws of turning and returning. So how do we do it? How do we forgive and remember? Maimonides says we just have to. He teaches that when the person who wronged you asks for forgiveness, you should forgive them with a complete heart and a willing spirit, even if this person aggravated and wronged you severely. Lo tikom velo titor, you should not seek revenge nor bear a grudge. If someone does the work of true tshuva, if someone looks deep within their soul and finds that they've done something wrong to you and comes to you and says, I am so sorry, please forgive me, Maimonides teaches we have to say, okay. If we don't, he teaches that a person who refused to grant forgiveness is the one considered the sinner. So if someone comes to you, really does the true process of tshuva, really does that soul searching, and begs for your forgiveness, if you say no, according to Maimonides, you're the sinner. It's a pretty strong message. Of course, there are absolutely extreme examples when forgiveness is out of the question. Murder, abuse, the Holocaust, it could go on and on. I'm sure you can think of lots of exceptions. But most cases of wrongdoing are much more common. Maybe there was a harsh word, a misunderstanding, a lie, trust was lost, it was broken. The more common transgressions, Maimonides tells us, these are the ones we grant forgiveness. It sounds fair. After all, we hope that if we also did the difficult work of tshuva and asked someone else for forgiveness after really recognizing what we did wrong and committing to not doing it again, we certainly would hope that we would be forgiven. But what do we do in cases when someone hasn't done that work? Or maybe that person is no longer here? What if they don't acknowledge that they have any work to do, let alone make any amends? What if they forgot? Or what if they literally had no clue how deeply they wounded you? What do you do? Maimonides and other Jewish scholars say, you still forgive them. But it's not for them as much as it is for you. Consider it a spiritual practice, good for your soul and your health. There are literally academic studies about the impact resentment has on your health, which shows a correlation between obsessive-compulsive disorder and resentment, and anxiety, depression, and probably hives too. That's what it said. Forgiveness, or diminishing our resentment, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs teaches, forgiveness is more than a technique of conflict resolution. It is a stunningly original strategy. In a world without forgiveness, evil begets evil, harm generates harm, and there is no way short of exhaustion or forgetfulness of breaking the sequence. Forgiveness breaks that chain. It introduces into the logic of interpersonal encounter the unpredictability of grace. It represents a decision not to do what instinct and passion urge us to do. It answers hate with refusal to hate, animosity with generosity. Few more daring ideas have entered the human situation. Forgiveness means that we are not destined endlessly to replay the grievances of yesterday. It is the ability to live with the past without being held captive by the past. It would not be an exaggeration, he continues, to say that forgiveness is the most compelling testimony to human freedom. It is about the action that is not reaction. It is the refusal to be defined by circumstance. It represents our ability to change course, reframe the narrative of the past, and create an unexpected set of possibilities for the future. More than hate destroys the hated, it destroys the hater. Or said another way, this quote attributed to many people, resentment is like drinking poison and wondering why it's not killing your enemy. It hurts us. Dr. Charlotte Van Ooyen Witvliet, associate professor of psychology at Hope College, offers a model to forgive and remember. She says forgiveness does not involve a literal forgetting. Forgiveness involves remembering, but remembering graciously. The forgiver remembers the true, though painful parts, but without the embellishment of angry adjectives and adverbs that stir up contempt. How do we remember graciously? I'm just going to guess, I'm not pointing any fingers, that everyone in here has something to ask forgiveness from, something to be forgiven for. Our tradition says that if you're thinking about someone who needs to make amends with you, who needs to come to you asking for forgiveness, look in a mirror. It says, rebuke yourself first. The Baal Shem Tov urges us to look inward before we decide to go to somebody, because maybe you are so upset by this thing that happened between you and someone else that you decide you're going to confront them about it. Not always the smartest idea, but if you do have that thought, look at yourself first. There are other professors of psychology from different colleges around the country that really talk about the importance of emotional forgiveness. And that's what it really means to let go. Professor Everett Worthington at Virginia Commonwealth University wrote a book called Forgiveness and Reconciliation, Theory and Application. He has devised a 5-step program with each letter representing one step. It's called REACH. He says you first recall the hurt objectively without blame or self-victimization. I don't really know how easy that is, but it's how he says we got to start. Worthington says then you empathize by trying to imagine the viewpoint of the person who wronged you. The altruistic part involves getting people to think about a time they were forgiven and how that felt. And when it's time to commit to forgiveness, people usually say, not yet. But when they finally do, they must hold on to forgiveness. I was really taken by that phrase, hold on to forgiveness. Because usually we think when we forgive someone, they're forgiven. But what Dr. Worthington is saying is that we actually have to actively cultivate that compassion. We have to actively remember incidents graciously. We have to actively hold on to our desire for forgiveness, because it's pretty easy to stir up that contempt the moment you stop. True forgiveness requires that we remember what went wrong and that we walk away from any experience knowing a deeper truth about ourselves and humanity. We so often focus on letting go of our anger and resentment, that we neglect to continue to cultivate our commitment to forgiveness. As I mentioned just a moment ago, Maimonides taught, lo tikom velo titor, we should not seek revenge or bear a grudge. He's actually quoting here from a verse in Leviticus you know very well. The second part of that verse, which will be read during our afternoon services on Yom Kippur. The second part, that is the more well-known part, is ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Rabbi Sharon Brous explains why would these two ideas be combined? Why would the commandment to not seek revenge and not hold a grudge be paired with the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? She explains that the reason these two seemingly unrelated ideas are paired with one another is because of what happens to us when we hold a grudge in our hearts. We are not able to love fully. And I don't mean love the perpetrator or the offender fully. I don't think we ever need to or ought to. I mean, we're not able to love fully. If you're walking around with the poison of hurt that somebody else caused you, you cannot love your children fully. You cannot love your friends fully. You cannot love your partner fully. We can't love each other fully because that kind of pain in your heart diminishes who you are and what you're capable of. It makes all of us unable to fully love as God intended us to fully love. There are times that someone is undeserving of our forgiveness, and yet we still forgive. And why? Rabbi Brous would argue that it's to help us maximize our potential, but also because we ask God to do it for us. During the High Holy Day season, we recite the words, Avinu Malkeinu, Honenu Va'anenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim. Avinu Malkeinu, treat us with grace, answer us, though we have done nothing to deserve it. Deal with us justly, love us, and save us. Rabbi Brous argues that if we want God to do this for us, if we come to God and say, we're not worthy, we have not been the people we set out to be, and we have done wrong, but please forgive us anyway, then we should be able to do that for one another. We certainly are not deserving of graciousness, but we're going to receive it anyway. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed. At this time, we are engaging in the process of cheshbon hanefesh, the process of taking an accounting of our souls. And although our tradition teaches us that God has already written our judgment by Rosh Hashanah, not to scare you, but God has already decided, according to our tradition, what's going to happen to us in the next year by today. However, as we know from the same prayer that begins on Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed, also tells us that we have the next 10 days, we have the days from now to Yom Kippur to do whatever we can to amend God's decree before we are sealed in the new year. The key to altering our fate is remembering. We show that we are engaging in tshuva. When we do that, God doesn't just grant us a clean slate. Rather, we've actually already done the work to clean it ourselves. Have regrets? Do something about it. Have anger in your heart? Do something about it. God's decree is not final. Hasidic Rabbi Simcha Bunim says the sins we commit, these are not the worst thing we do. After all, temptation is powerful and people are weak. The great crime of humanity is that we could turn at any time, but we do not. We are here because it is time to turn. It's time for tshuva. Our liturgy also teaches us exactly how we can influence God between now and Yom Kippur, and it's through repentance, prayer, and acts of justice. These acts avert God's severe decree. Or as a creative translation declares, Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah have the power to change the character of our lives. Said another way, engaging in repentance, prayer, and acts of justice won't change what happens to us, but they will change us. What this complex prayer is teaching us is a lesson in community. Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah are tools through which we can support one another. They compel us to reach in three directions, as Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav said: inward to oneself, upward to God, and outward to others. He said that the miracle in life is that in reaching in any one direction, we're actually embracing all three. The three T's, teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, provide us with mirrors through which growth is possible. They remind us to think of others, to think of God, and think about the places where we need to grow. This season reminds us that accountability is stronger when we encourage each other to live this way. Holding each other accountable is not taking and accounting for others. It's not about you thinking of other people's lives and all of the wrong that they've done. But it's assisting in other people doing that, and hopefully they will do the same for you. Hopefully they will hold the mirror up to you so you can see yourself truly, so that you can grow. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as completely starting over. Our memory is too strong for that. Relationships have been altered. We are works in progress. However, through forgiving without forgetting, we open ourselves up to connection with one another. We open ourselves to be able to love fully, whether it be through tshuva, righting the wrongs we have created or caused, whether it be through tefillah, searching for spiritual truths, or whether it be through tzedakah, responding to the injustices we see around us. Doing anything leads to deeper connection to ourselves, others, the world around us, and God. What could this year be like if you just let it go? You've got 10 days left to decide what you're going to do. Let's use these days to embrace ourselves and each other. Let's forgive and remember graciously. Let's rewrite our own script. What could this year be like if we did? Let's help each other through memory and forgiveness. So next time you hear forgive and, I hope you'll think of forgive but don't
Forget.
because it's what helps us grow. Can you hear Ratzon? May it be God's will.
Amen.